Blake Lively, once the picture-perfect icon of grace and Hollywood charm, is now facing a tidal wave of backlash, not from a tabloid scandal, not from a rogue co-star, but from a digital creator. Rebellion she may have never seen coming. It all started with a bold and some say reckless move, issuing subpoenas to YouTubers and independent commentators who had spoken critically but legally about her ongoing legal dispute with director Justin Baldoni. The message was clear: speak out and you may find yourself entangled in the very lawsuit you were discussing. But it didn't go as planned. Instead of silencing the online voices, Blake's legal maneuver sparked an all-out resistance. Subpoenaed creators didn't back down. They went public, exposing what they saw as an attempt to suppress free speech and control the narrative. Videos went viral, legal panels dissected every filing, and Blake's reputation, once sparkling and untouched, began to fracture under the weight of public scrutiny. With each passing day, her silence only amplified the chorus of voices rising against her. And now, in a stunning twist, reports indicate that Blake Lively is quietly pulling back, retreating from the very subpoenas that started this storm. Has she realized her mistake, or is this a calculated move to avoid further backlash? Meanwhile, conservative firebrand Candace Owens is deep in her own courtroom battle, one that's becoming more chaotic and politically explosive by the hour. As these two high-profile figures navigate legal chaos and public fallout, the question becomes impossible to ignore in a world where creators have the power to shape the truth. What happens when Hollywood tries to fight back? Get ready. This isn't just celebrity drama, this is a legal and cultural reckoning. The tension began quietly, tucked behind the carefully crafted social media posts and red carpet appearances. Blake Lively, long known as one of Hollywood's most unproblematic stars, was suddenly at the center of an unexpected legal firestorm. What was once an offhand media headline quickly evolved into something more, something personal, legal, and shockingly public. The spark, a flurry of subpoenas targeting YouTubers, podcasters, and independent content creators who had commented on the very public dispute between Blake Lively and director-turned-activist Justin Baldoni. These creators, some with large audiences and others with modest followings, received formal legal notices demanding that they hand over their content, communication, and even draft notes related to coverage of the case. What made this even more contentious was the apparent motivation behind the move: to root out who, if anyone, had been leaking private documents or shaping public opinion. At first glance, it looked like a search for justice, but to many it felt more like an attempt to muzzle independent commentary. The term fishing expedition quickly began circulating in legal blogs and reaction videos. The subpoenas weren't random. Some of the biggest names in online commentary were targeted: Andy Signore, Candace Owens, and others, who had dared to ask hard questions about Blake's case, her strategy, and her relationship to broader Hollywood power dynamics. While none of the creators had accused Blake directly of wrongdoing, their coverage had undeniably been critical, dissecting court filings, analyzing public statements, and raising the kind of issues traditional outlets often ignored. Blake's legal team, however, seemed to think that line had been crossed. What followed was an attempt to control the narrative through legal pressure. The public reaction was swift. Fans and critics alike were stunned. Was Blake really going after creators for speaking their mind? Was this a legitimate legal strategy, or a Hollywood star's attempt to shut down uncomfortable conversations? Many content creators saw the subpoenas as retaliatory warning that such moves could set a dangerous precedent for free speech. If major celebrities could weaponize their legal teams to target dissenting voices, what did that mean for independent journalism? The outrage was palpable, and it only grew louder. Legal analysts began to weigh in. Brian Friedman, a prominent entertainment attorney often called upon for high-profile disputes, described the subpoenas as aggressively overbroad and hinted that the strategy could backfire. In a televised panel, he questioned whether Blake's legal team understood the long-term implications of using subpoenas in this way. You're not just making a legal move, you're sending a message to the entire creator economy. And that message might not be the one you think, he said. Behind the scenes, a different kind of drama was unfolding. Some content creators publicly shared their subpoenas, turning legal documents into viral content. Others lawyered up and pushed back hard. In one now viral video, a mid-tier commentator calmly shredded the document on camera, while explaining that his team was filing a motion to quash. The moment wasn't just cathartic, it became symbolic of a wider rebellion against what many saw as censorship cloaked in legal formalities. Amid the growing backlash, Blake Lively remained silent. No public comment, no statement from her representatives. The only official words came through dry, carefully worded legal filings. But silence in this case wasn't neutral, it began to feel like avoidance. A wave of TikTok videos and long-form YouTube analyses explored the implications of that silence. Was Blake regrouping, or was she reeling from a PR disaster? She didn't anticipate either way. The damage was spreading and the strategy was being questioned even by her own supporters. To make matters worse, the subpoena strategy didn't seem to be producing results. No significant revelations emerged, no smoking gun. No influencer came forward with damaging confessions or leaked files. Instead, creators stood their ground, supported by fans and free speech organizations, who condemned the legal maneuver as a modern form of intimidation. The narrative had shifted, and not in Blake's favor. Then came the most shocking development. Yet quiet behind-the-scenes movements in the court docket suggested that some subpoenas were being withdrawn. Slowly, without much noise, filings began to disappear or show signs of non-enforcement. For legal observers, this was telling. You don't back down from a subpoena unless you know the fight isn't going your way, or unless you realize the backlash is worse than the benefit. By this point, the phrase "Blake Lively chickened out" was trending across multiple platforms. It wasn't just a dramatic headline, it was a sentiment echoed by many in the creator space, who felt vindicated. To them, Blake's retreat wasn't a strategic recalibration, it was an admission that the legal strategy had failed. Failed to silence, failed to intimidate, and failed to anticipate the strength of the pushback. In trying to control the narrative, she had unintentionally created a new one. A story about celebrity overreach, media resistance, and the unpredictable power of online voices. What made the situation even more complex was the lack of transparency from Blake's team. Without a clear public statement, speculation filled the vacuum. Was the decision to drop the subpoena strategic, based on legal advice? Or was it emotional, a reaction to the sheer volume of backlash from fans and commentators? Some legal insiders suggested that the optics had become too damaging to continue. At some point, one entertainment lawyer remarked, "You have to decide if winning the case is worth losing the public." Meanwhile, the creators who had been targeted found themselves elevated to a new level of prominence. Their audiences grew, their credibility deepened, and their content, now framed as part of a larger battle for transparency, took on a new level of seriousness. What had once been standard commentary suddenly felt like civic resistance. And Blake Lively, once viewed as above the fray, was now a central figure in a growing debate about censorship, celebrity, and accountability. It's important to note that none of this unfolded in a vacuum. The broader cultural moment was already charged with political divisions, debates about media trust, and ongoing tensions around what constitutes legitimate criticism. In that climate, the idea of a celebrity attempting to police online speech hit a nerve. It wasn't just about one actress or one lawsuit anymore. It was about power and who had the right to speak. As the subpoenas faded and the legal noise softened, what remained was a shattered attempt to silence the very voices it sought to suppress. Instead of control, there was chaos. Instead of silence, there was amplification. Blake Lively's legal strategy had become a case study in how not to handle public discourse in the digital age. And while her team may have hoped to quietly move on, the damage was already done, setting the stage for the next chapter of this unfolding saga. As the legal drama surrounding the subpoenas began to unravel, a parallel crisis was taking root. A full-blown public relations disaster that few in Blake Lively's camp seemed prepared to handle. For years, Blake had cultivated an image of effortless grace and Hollywood class. She was the actress with the perfect Instagram aesthetic, the loving wife to Ryan Reynolds, the funny mom who didn't take herself too seriously. But now that entire facade was being threatened, not by scandal in the traditional sense, but by an increasingly vocal online backlash that she couldn't cure it away. The media was quick to seize on the chaos. Major entertainment outlets began running headlines that questioned Blake's intentions, while legal commentators on platforms like YouTube and TikTok picked apart every move with surgical precision. What was once considered a quiet courtroom maneuver had turned into a public spectacle, and Blake's name was trending for all the wrong reasons. Suddenly, the words tone-deaf, controlling, and out of touch were appearing next to her name, not just in snarky Twitter threads, but in serious editorials questioning her use of power. The irony was painful. In trying to control the narrative, Blake had lost control completely. Her team, it seemed, had misjudged the moment. In an era where the public demands transparency and punishes perceived censorship, sending subpoenas to creators discussing a legal matter was never going to go over well. Yet instead of course-correcting early or addressing the controversy head-on, Blake's camp maintained radio silence. And that silence created a vacuum, one that critics, commentators, and even some fans were eager to fill. Public relations experts began weighing in. In one widely shared piece, a crisis management consultant explained that Blake's team had made a classic mistake mistaking public commentary for private threat. You can't treat every critical voice like a legal liability, the article read. What you end up doing is alienating the very people who once supported you. It's not just bad optics, it's bad strategy. Another analyst described it as a masterclass in how to turn a minor PR bump into a reputational landslide. But perhaps the most significant blow came from within the Hollywood machine itself. As news of the subpoenas spread, other celebrities, some quietly, others more boldly, began to distance themselves from the controversy. While no A-lister came out swinging against Blake directly, subtle signs of discomfort began to emerge. A well-known actress, once frequently seen photographed alongside Blake at fashion events, unfollowed her on social media. A late-night host made a thinly veiled joke about celebrities subpoenaing bloggers when Google alerts go off. The crowd laughed, but the message was clear: the tide was turning. Worse still, Blake's fans, long her most loyal defenders, were now split. On forums, fan pages, and comment sections, debates erupted over whether she had gone too far. Some remained steadfast, arguing that Blake was merely protecting her legal rights. But others were far less forgiving. This isn't the Blake we know, one longtime fan wrote. She always seemed so confident and secure. Why is she going after people with 50,000 subscribers just for having an opinion? Another fan commented. This feels like bullying disguised as a lawsuit. I don't care how famous she is, this is wrong. And then came the think pieces, the longer form essays and commentary videos that connected the dots between Blake's current legal strategy and larger issues around celebrity culture, privilege, and control. One particularly viral video dissected how the subpoenas mirrored a broader pattern in Hollywood, where celebrities try to manage their public image through suppression rather than dialogue. The creator asked a pointed question: if Blake can't handle people talking about her case, should she really be involved in a public lawsuit at all? Meanwhile, YouTubers and commentators who had been subpoenaed or targeted began to use the controversy as a platform for deeper conversations. Andy Signore released a 30-minute video not only addressing his own experience, but also calling out the chilling effect such tactics could have on digital creators. This isn't just about me or Blake, he said. This is about the message this sends to every creator out there, that if you speak up about powerful people, you might get slapped with a legal threat. His video was viewed over 1 million times in 48 hours. Other creators followed suit. Panels, live streams, and podcast episodes sprang up, all focused on the same question: where is the line between legal protection and public suppression? Blake's silence made her an easy target. With no interviews, no statements, and no visible remorse, she became a symbol of Hollywood entitlement. An image that stood in stark contrast to the relatable persona she had carefully built over the years. At this point, even the media outlets that had previously painted Blake in glowing terms began to shift their tone. Entertainment news shows ran segments asking whether this controversy would affect her future projects. Would brands think twice about endorsements? Would producers see her as a liability? One insider hinted that some projects in pre-production were already being reevaluated due to the growing public pressure, though unconfirmed. The mere rumor was enough to spark further speculation. The legal fallout was one thing, but the PR fallout, that was something else entirely. Public opinion is a fragile thing, especially in today's media landscape, where narratives shift at lightning speed. One day you're America's sweetheart, the next you're a cautionary tale about what happens when you underestimate the power of the internet. For Blake, that shift had happened almost overnight. To make matters worse, the timing couldn't have been worse. The entertainment industry was already in a moment of reckoning, with widespread discussions about accountability, transparency, and privilege dominating headlines. Against that backdrop, Blake's actions didn't look brave or protective, they looked regressive. While she may have seen her subpoenas as a smart legal move, the public saw something very different: a celebrity trying to silence criticism instead of engaging with it. The situation also exposed a deeper divide in how celebrities view their public platforms. For many in Hollywood, there's still a belief that the media can be controlled, that narratives can be spun, that criticism can be softened with the right PR. But the rise of independent media has changed that dynamic entirely. Creators don't need studio approval or red carpet access. They have their own platforms, their own audiences, and their own credibility. And when those creators are attacked, their audiences respond loudly. By the time Blake's team reportedly began scaling back the subpoena strategy, it was too late. The damage had been done. Reputations once considered bulletproof were now fragile. Audiences who once adored her were now questioning her integrity, and creators who might have been neutral observers were now vocal critics, empowered by the very pressure that was supposed to shut them down. Still, some insiders hoped that Blake might turn things around. A sincere apology, a thoughtful interview, a moment of humility, any of those things might have helped. But they never came, and as weeks passed, the silence only reinforced the perception that Blake wasn't just unwilling to engage, she didn't see the need. That perception, more than any legal filing, is what truly altered her public image. And yet, this was only one part of the story. While Blake Lively's team struggled to manage the fallout from their legal strategy, another legal storm was gaining momentum in a very different courtroom. Candace Owens, another high-profile figure with a strong media presence, was embroiled in a trial of her own, one that would intersect with the Blake Lively saga in unexpected ways. As these two legal narratives unfolded in parallel, the conversation around power, speech, and public accountability only grew more urgent. And if Blake thought the heat had passed, she was wrong. The next chapter, involving Candace, controversy, and courtroom fireworks, would soon push everything into even more explosive territory. The moment the subpoenas hit, the YouTuber and independent content creator community didn't react with fear, they responded with fire. What Blake Lively's legal team might have underestimated was just how resilient and resourceful the creator economy has become. These weren't anonymous social media accounts throwing wild accusations into the void. These were journalists, commentators, analysts, and entertainers who had built loyal followings over years of work. And when they were suddenly pulled into a legal battle, they didn't cower, they mobilized. At the heart of the resistance was a powerful and shared sentiment. This was bigger than one celebrity and a handful of creators. This was about free speech, about the right to cover legal stories in the public domain, about the right to express critical opinions even when those opinions ruffle feathers. In elite circles, to creators who received subpoenas or were named in legal filings, this wasn't just a lawsuit. It was a direct challenge to their legitimacy, and they weren't about to let that go unanswered. Videos started going up almost immediately. Some creators chose calm legal breakdowns. Others took a more emotional, passionate route, expressing shock and disappointment that someone like Blake Lively, long thought to be media savvy and gracious, would resort to such measures. One YouTuber with nearly 400,000 subscribers went viral for his chilling statement, "They came for me because I told the truth. That's the only reason, and I'm not going to stop now." The most notable aspect of these videos was how unified they were despite differences in tone or audience. Across the board, creators were sharing the same core message: we will not be intimidated. They reminded viewers that discussing public lawsuits, analyzing statements, and questioning celebrity PR spin is not harassment, it's journalism, commentary, and in many cases, constitutionally protected speech. Andy Signore, a longtime figure in the digital commentary world, became something of a lightning rod. After receiving his own subpoena, he publicly responded on multiple platforms. In a highly watched live stream, he outlined the legal overreach in the filings, detailed how his team planned to fight back, and challenged Blake's legal team to justify the action. He didn't stop there. He invited other subpoenaed creators onto his platform, forming a kind of digital town hall where the larger implications of the case could be aired. Viewers flooded the chat with support donations and calls for justice. What might have been a private legal exchange became a public spectacle, one Blake's team clearly hadn't anticipated. Andy's case quickly inspired others. Candace Owens, whose own legal saga we'll explore in depth shortly, weighed in on her show, blasting Blake's tactics and framing them as elitist overreach. She was unapologetically blunt, warning that celebrities who try to crush criticism with court threats were setting themselves up for massive public pushback. "This is America," she said, "and you don't get to silence people just because they hurt your feelings." Her words resonated across political and cultural lines, drawing applause even from commentators who didn't always agree with her politics. In fact, the backlash against the subpoenas became one of the rare issues that seemed to unite creators across ideological spectrums. Left-leaning commentators, centrists, and conservatives alike all expressed concern over the precedent these legal actions could set. This wasn't about who liked Blake Lively or who supported Justin Baldoni. This was about principle, about power, about the message being sent to the next generation of digital voices. Legal experts began chiming in more frequently. On legal YouTube channels with hundreds of thousands of subscribers, lawyers began reviewing the filings, live pointing out vague language, inconsistencies, and what many considered alarmingly broad demands. One entertainment attorney summarized the situation succinctly: "These subpoenas feel like they were written to fish, not to find. That's not how the law should work." In one memorable roundtable discussion hosted on a podcast popular among creators, the tone was both somber and defiant. A lawyer representing one of the subpoenaed creators warned that If celebrities continued to weaponize the legal system against independent commentators, they'd find themselves facing legal scrutiny in return. Every filing leaves a paper trail. And if you abuse the system, you're not just risking public embarrassment, you're risking sanctions too. As more information trickled out, it became clear that Blake's legal team had been overly ambitious. In their approach, some subpoenas requested extensive communications and private data far beyond what seemed necessary or reasonable. In several cases, recipients had never even made accusatory claims, they'd simply reported on what had been filed in court or offered critical commentary. The overreach became part of the story itself. The creators didn't just respond through content, some took legal action. Motions to quash were filed. Legal defense funds were launched and shared widely. A few creators even announced that they were considering counterclaims accusing Blake's legal team of abuse of process. Whether those claims go anywhere remains to be seen, but they added another layer of public scrutiny to an already controversial episode. What was particularly striking about this backlash was its sheer scale. This wasn't just a few big names leading the charge. Mid-tier and even smaller creators joined in, adding their voices to the resistance. Viewers, sensing the moment, rallied around them. Support flowed in the form of shares, comments, donations, and amplification. Hashtags like hashtag subpoenaed speech, hashtag creators under fire, and hashtag stand with commentary began trending in various spaces. What Blake's team may have assumed would be a quiet surgical legal maneuver turned into a cultural flashpoint. All of this put enormous pressure on Lively's camp. Public relations professionals now had a crisis that wasn't just external, it was internal, as even former allies began to express concern. Behind closed doors, there were reports of tense conversations between Blake's team and studio executives who feared long-term brand damage. At least one advertiser reportedly began monitoring this situation closely, concerned that affiliation with Blake could cause blowback among younger consumers who supported free speech. The commentary community, once viewed by some in Hollywood as a noisy but marginal group, had proven its strength. They weren't just telling stories, they were shaping them. By standing their ground, they had turned what might have been a footnote in a legal filing into a defining moment for digital media. Their message was clear: if you come for one of us, you come for all of us. And as they continued to speak out, one thing became apparent: the culture of fear that once silenced critics in Hollywood was beginning to fracture. No longer could powerful figures assume they were immune from scrutiny or safe from blowback. Not when creators had millions of listeners. Not when those listeners were engaged, loyal, and unwilling to be pushed around. The entire episode revealed just how much the media landscape has changed. In decades past, a celebrity might have been able to control their image through selective interviews, tightly managed appearances, and legally enforced silence. But those days are over in the age of YouTube, TikTok, Substack, and podcasts. Every voice has a platform, and when you try to silence that voice, you often make it louder. As the subpoenas quietly began to be withdrawn and Blake's team pulled back, the creators declared victory. But it wasn't just about beating one legal threat, it was about drawing a line in the sand, about making it clear that the creator community was watching and ready to fight back against any attempt to silence it. With that line now drawn, all eyes turned to the next legal showdown, one that involved another powerful, polarizing figure, Candace Owens. Her trial was unfolding on an entirely different battlefield, but the themes of power, speech, and accountability remained eerily similar. And as the public prepared for another round of courtroom spectacle, the message from the creator world was loud and clear: free speech isn't up for debate. What began as a series of quiet legal filings has now evolved into a cultural earthquake, one that not only shook Blake Lively's carefully curated image, but also sparked a broader conversation about power, speech, and the shifting dynamics between Hollywood and the creator economy. By attempting to use subpoenas to confront critical coverage, Lively's legal team underestimated the strength of the very community they hoped to intimidate. And in doing so, they inadvertently elevated those creators into voices of defiance, champions of transparency and free expression. In the end, Blake Lively's quiet withdrawal from her aggressive legal strategy said more than any public statement ever could. The move may have been strategic, but the timing and silence around it revealed a deeper truth. The backlash had worked. The legal tactics designed to suppress dissent and gain control over the public narrative had backfired spectacularly. What was intended as a private legal maneuver exploded into a public relations disaster, painting Blake not as a victim of false reporting but as a celebrity out of touch with the times. Meanwhile, the Candace Owens trial unfolded as a parallel storm, equally controversial, politically charged, and divisive. While Owens may have taken a different route in how she engaged with critics, And the media, the underlying themes remained control, confrontation, and consequences. And while she continues to battle in court, the ripple effects of her case are adding to a growing skepticism about the use of litigation as a tool to reshape public perception. What ties both of these high-profile sagas together is the role of independent voices, commentators, analysts, and creators who refuse to be sidelined. They weren't just covering a story, they became part of it. By standing firm in the face of legal threats, they reminded the world that speech is not something that can be bought, silenced, or erased by status or celebrity. In a world where fame used to protect the powerful, the digital age has rewritten the rules. Social media, podcasts, YouTube, and live streams have democratized influence. No longer can public figures hide behind curated press releases or carefully filtered images. Today, narratives are shaped in real time by people who aren't afraid to ask questions, challenge authority, and speak truth to power, even if that power has millions of followers and a high-priced legal team. For Blake Lively, this chapter will likely remain a blemish on an otherwise polished career. For the creators she tried to silence, it may mark the moment they broke through and solidified their platforms as forces to be reckoned with. And for the public watching from the sidelines, it's a reminder of something much bigger. Truth is no longer owned by the privileged few. It belongs to all of us. This isn't just the end of a celebrity legal mishap, it's the beginning of a cultural turning point, one where creators, not celebrities, are shaping the public record.